Hey everybody, so this is the computer I've shown some pictures of on the forums, but this is the video. Might be a little bit of a series. This first video is going to start out with how and why I put this particular computer together. So I was mainly trying to see if I could run kind of a missing spot in terms of games for Windows 95, 98, and even into the late DOS era. So on the typically I'll try to emulate if I can, but the emulation wasn't really ideal. I tried PCEM. DOSBox is just, it's really good on the main DOS stuff, but kind of tricky for the Voodoo and later type things. So I was thinking, well, I've got a bunch of older machines in my basement. Maybe I can piece the parts together and come up with something. So I first started with the shuttle case. Guy back there, maybe we'll talk about him later on. And that's a little bit overpowered, and it wouldn't install Windows 98. It'd get through part of the process and just give up and crash. Try different RAM options because that's a factor when installing Windows 98. You can't go above 512 megabytes, I think. I played around with the Athlon. That's the beige computer down there. That's a 1.2 gigahertz, still kind of overpowered. The third option, which is the gutted case down on the bottom there, is the compact Presario 500. That had a Celeron 533 megahertz, but typically with those compact and HP and those cheap box computers, the motherboard wasn't cooperating with me with the PCI slots. In the end, what I kind of ended up with was the shuttle case for Windows XP, the beige Athlon computer for some later Windows 98 for DirectX and OpenGL, and it was supposed to be the compact Presario, but a final machine for covering DOS to like 3DFX Voodoo type. I couldn't really get the compact Presario to work reliably in DOS with any of the sound cards that I had. So I kind of dug into my box of parts, and I had a couple options. I have quite a few Pentiums, so I got a lot of the original Pentiums. So this would have been a 90 megahertz. Just CPUs I've just removed out of computers, and it's out of focus. But this was a 75 megahertz, and one last one. This is 100, and yeah, they came with the heat sinks glued to the top. And I had a fourth CPU, which is the one that's in here underneath the heatsink, and that was a Pentium 200 MMX. So that was the best out of the bunch. So I thought I'd start with that one. But I did not have the motherboard that I would need to be able to support that. I would need a socket 7. So started just perusing on eBay, and kind of surprised I found something so ideal so quickly. But I came across this micro ITX or ATX motherboard. This socket 7 is kind of a strange series. It kind of spread across a lot of different standards, so you can get socket 7 that have a lot of the original AT type things, and then it kind of blends into later ATX with AGP and a lot of advanced things. So ideally what I was looking for was a motherboard that had some ISO slots and PCI, and since I already had the compact Presario hardware, it needed to be ATX, not AT, because that would mean I'd need a new power supply. Probably be missing some of the common later connectors that are more relevant. So I came across this motherboard, and it was, I would say, dirt cheap, probably about $40. And it's an Asus, comes with the SIS chipset, so it looks like that's a 5595. It's got onboard sound and video. I kind of tinkered with those just to try them out, but as with most onboard stuff, it wasn't very impressive. The sound card that's onboard is an ESS Creative combination. It's I'd have to look up the right model number. It might have been a 19 something, but if you look it up, this particular sound blaster apparently tries to use I think a wavetable for the ad-lib emulation, and it sounds horrible. There's a video that I found that sounds the same. Yeah, that wasn't ideal either, but I do like Asus. I've got the Asus and the Athlon computer. I've used a lot of other Asus type products. It works out pretty well. The onboard video would be adequate enough for VGA, Super VGA. It's got DirectX. It's capable of those APIs, not very functional. if there's another version of the board, apparently you can get at least 8 megabytes on board. Otherwise, it shares the memory with the system memory, which is going to be incredibly slow. So for this point, I disabled the video and the sound through the jumpers. And starting with the CPU, like I said, I used the Pentium 200 MMX. This heatsink, I kind of like the way it looks, so I threw it on there. It was pretty tight to put on, but that's from the stock cooler that came with the Athlon Thunderbird. I had the fan connected to the motherboard, but it's running like full speed and it was incredibly noisy. But this case that I bought, also, this is actually new, but it was another dirt cheap option for the micro ATX motherboard. That was just $20. For this, it's perfect. Power supply, that's straight from the compact Presario. Same with the floppy drive. The CD-ROM is out of the compact Presario, but this is something I had bought separately that I had just put in there. For the memory, 64 meg sim came from the compact, and then I had a 32 meg and an 8 meg floating around in a bag, and I thought I'd just try to see if they work. So all three are passing the mem checker, so I've got roughly 100 megabytes of RAM, which I'll never need in this computer. The 64, even that's overkill. 16 or 32 would have been enough, but if you got it, why not use it? So expansion cards. So the main target to use this was the Voodoo 3, which I put in the bottom PCI slot. I've just got a Ethernet cable just to transfer things. It just makes things so much easier. And then sound card. Right now I've only got the PCI sound cards. At first I tried the Sound Blaster 5.1 live with the DOS emulation drivers, and yeah, it worked okay in some cases, but not the greatest. So I thought I knew this particular card, which is the Phillips Acoustic Edge, had some DOS drivers. I knew they weren't so reliable, at least in the Athlon. They were very unstable. So I thought I'd just give it a try just to see how it might respond in an older system like this. And surprisingly, it's a much better experience than what I've had before. And I think I'm going to do a video later before I take this out, just to kind of show what this was capable of. But really, this card is Windows 98 or Windows XP. Probably Windows 98 the best. I mean, it's a great sound card, but yeah, it seems like they started the DOS drivers and got something good enough, and maybe they didn't completely finish fixing all the bugs, because even in this machine the ad-lib is kind of iffy. The MIDI and the Sound Blaster digital stuff is pretty good, and I think I'll do another video with just some samples just to give an idea, because there's a little bit out there, but I don't think anybody's really covered this card at all. You know, Creative's going to get all the coverage since they were so popular at the time, but I'll give a little demo of how that works. So overall, this machine, cooling, it's got this front fan and the back fan. Between the two, it seems to be pretty good. The CPU, if the temperature monitor is correct, even under load, doesn't seem to be getting above 40 degrees centigrade. So just for the noise, I've left it unplugged. If I can get cables to reduce the voltage to the fan and slow it down, I'll try that. But right now it's just the back fan connected to the motherboard and the front fan. We'll look at the front. See if I can do this. Yeah, it's not a terrible monitor. I mean, a terrible case. I just needed something to put it in. Of course, the front USB and the AC97 sound jacks are currently not plugged to anything, but the floppy and the CD drive are working perfectly fine. So what this is going to lead up to that just arrived today is this guy. And this hopefully will give me perfect DOS type sound. So it's an Opti 82C931. Sounded pretty good on samples that I've heard online. It works with a Unisound driver, which is a plus. So I plan to just try this out live on a video, see how it goes. Oh, and it's got the wavetable header for any kind of wavetable. But ideally, what I've got planned to use is the MIDI output with a Roland MIDI device to another computer, either emulating a Roland device or just doing a sound font in general. So that's it for this video.